don't be afraid that your child is going to wind up behind everyone else, because they will wind up behind everyone else if they're super stressed out. That's much worse. That's much more detrimental than the missing school for a day.
You're listening to the Mindful Mama podcast, episode number 241. Today, we're talking about the complete home learning guide with Lauren Spigelmeyer and Kimberlynn Lavelle. Welcome to the Mindful Mama podcast. Here, it's about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. At Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have. And when you have calm and peace within, then you can give it to your children. I'm your host, Hunter Clark Field's Mindful Mama mentor. I help smart, thoughtful parents stay calm so they can have strong, connected relationships with their children. I've been practicing mindfulness for over 20 years. I'm the creator of the Mindful Parenting membership, and I'm the author of Raising Good Humans, a mindful guide to breaking the cycle of reactive parenting and raising kind, confident kids. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And if you're new, welcome to the Mindful Mama podcast. So glad to connect with you. So I have to tell you something. As I record this intro, it's actually the first day of virtual school for my kids. And, I'm feeling a lot right now. This is kind of intense. And right now, my 10-year-old is outside on our patio doing her morning meeting with her teacher, and she's taken it really seriously and she's doing great. And that feels good. Right now, my 13-year-old is I've offered to give her some help, and she's just like monosyllabic answers to me, and she's not very connecting at the moment with me, which is kind of the way of 13-year-olds, but it still is hard for me as a highly sensitive person to deal with that. So I may or may not have had a wee little cry on the hammock and then gone inside, splashed some water on my face, and moved on. Oh my, first day of school. So, there's so many different situations for people out there. I mean, I know that your situation, you may not have kids who are in school ages yet. You may be dealing with in-person learning. You may be dealing with home learning. You're probably juggling some work with helping your kids through this whole situation. And it's crazy. COVID 2020, oh man, you're just playing with us. So it's hard. It's hard for all of us. And I want you to know that you're not alone if this is hard. It's hard and we can get through it. So I want to give you a few wonderful growth mindset mantras for us parents before we dive into this episode for the new year. So let these be some of your mantras. We don't need all the answers to get started. We don't need all the answers to get started. Everything is figure-outable. One of my favorites, everything is figure-outable. Let's remind ourselves that my child, their teacher, and I are on the same team. My child, their teacher, and I are all on the same team. Together, we can do hard things. We don't know the full plan yet, but we'll figure it out. And this is hard, but we can work together for solutions. This is hard, but we can work together for solutions. And that's what this episode is all about, is working together for solutions. And so I'm very excited today to give you two awesome educational experts. The first person you will hear from is Lauren Spigelmeyer, and she is the founder of the Behavior Hub and professor at University of Pennsylvania. And she's a teacher who stopped reacting to the daily fires of her classroom and started preventing issues. And she coaches parents and teachers to get the results they want using techniques learned from studying neurobiology and nutrition. And we're going to talk about how to set up your optimal learning environment. What does that look like as far as the space? How can you make a great space? I'm also going to be talking to Kimberlynn Lavelle, an education specialist who has worked with struggling learners with a variety of profiles for over 15 years, and she teaches the best strategies to parents so they can teach their own children successfully. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And, this is a school year that looks very different from before, with many kids, we're just learning completely virtually or even homeschooling, right? So what's the best way to learn at home? What do we need to pay attention to? What can we let go of? And they're going to walk us through this new learning at home land, okay? And I want you to listen for some really important takeaways. That mental and emotional health is the number one priority. Oh my gosh, mental and emotional health is the number one priority. I can't stress this enough. This is so, so important. It was such a relief for me to have these conversations and to hear this. That moving our bodies and getting outside are essential to learning and brain development, and that we can design the space from seating to decor to aroma to optimize learning. So make sure you listen through to the very end. This is a very powerful episode, and you are going to get so, so much out of it. Before we dive in, I want to let you know that if you are listening right when this opens, you might have a couple days to join the Mindful Parenting membership. This is the perfect time to join. It brings together mindfulness, self-compassion, and skillful communication to give you all the skills you need to become the parent you want to be in this challenging time, and join a community of hundreds of other families around the world. We're doing the same thing. And we walk you through how to talk so your kids will listen to you more, even when they're giving you monosyllabic answers, how to reduce your reactivity. And we have some awesome bonuses. We've just put together the 7 very best mindfulness practices for kids bonus is brand new. And we have the awesome, over 100-page mindful parenting workbook that is only available through the membership. So there's so much there. You may have a couple days, you may be able to join if you're listening to it as this episode comes out, or if you're in the future, check it out. Go to mindfulparentingcourse.com. It's a way to dive in deeper, work with me more. That's mindfulparentingcourse.com. Okay, let's dive into this episode. Lauren, thank you so much for coming on the Mindful Mama podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this.
Well, I'm glad to talk to you. This is such a crazy time, and I'm super excited to kind of think about that perfect home learning environment, because this might be a little selfish, but I need this too, of course, for my kids too. But you're really passionate about helping kids with emotional regulation, and I don't know. I know from talking to a lot of people and from knowing myself that a lot of these passions for helping people to stabilize these things and to dive deeper into this, it comes from personal challenges often. And I wonder, where does that passion for emotional regulation come from for you?
That is such a good question. From the classroom, from being a teacher in a classroom, multiple classrooms, and having a lot of kids that were really challenging, and these kids very quickly get labels from other teachers, and they come to you and you know kind of what to expect based on other teachers' perception of them. And that always became a very interesting thing to me. Why do these kids respond and react this way? And not only that, but what are natural solutions that we can put in place to help them instead of just label them and respond to them? But what preventative measures can we take? And that led me into a whole lot of research on all the elements of emotional regulation, especially the one we're going to talk about today.
So it's really interesting because we think of emotional regulation as this completely internal thing that's happening, right? And we look at tools like mindfulness and looking at that stress response very much as an internal thing. But what you're pointing to is that there's a lot of back and forth with the environment. And what I point to a lot is there's a lot of back and forth with us, the parents, with that emotional regulation. But what are some of the factors then that come into play here?
Yeah. So, I mean, we definitely think it's mostly internal, and there is a lot of the brain, there the brain plays a huge part on emotional regulation, but our brain has these sensors, our body has these sensors that are designed to inform you about the world around you. So it's a lot of that external stuff that kids are exposed to, or any individual is exposed to, that really alters your internal state. So if we can change the external stuff and address the external stuff, it will work on the internal stuff.
And I was so relieved to sort of talk to you about this a little bit earlier and realize that a lot of times it has to do with simplification. So I think we'll also talk about that, but let's talk about this. We're in this crazy pandemic. We've got all these people who are trying to work from home. I'm seeing articles in the New York Times of like these families who are like putting down new floors in the unused barn behind their houses to create like a new learning, place for their kids. Let's assume that most of us don't have like a random barn in our backyard that we can just renovate for our kids. But we want to have a good learning environment. We want to set up a situation that they're going to learn from home optimally. My guess is that last spring's situation with my 10-year-old slumped in her bed, just like staring at a lesson on Khan Academy, was not optimal. What are some of the things that we want to start to pay attention to when we're thinking about doing remote learning with our kids, or even homeschooling for that matter?
Right. I think when I talk about room design and space design and learning environment design, a lot of people automatically go to decor and bringing things into those environments. And it's more so about using the natural things around us, because our all these stress response reactions are based on brain biology. So using the natural things around us, so seating, considering what kind of seat, where the seat is, the temperature. Can you control the temperature at all? Things like the lighting and natural light exposure, noise, the design of the space and the decor of the space as well. And even things like aromas, smell, really impact your ability to learn. So all of those little things considered collectively together to either help you stay neutral or to raise your internal stress response.
So what are some things where would we start? So if we're looking at our living rooms, our dining rooms, and we're looking around, what am I looking for?
I think I like to start with seating, because like everyone's going to probably sit on something. They're going to have a chair. So, what can we change about just the seating in general? And that could be, for one, I think when we think we're working or kids are supposed to be learning, they're supposed to be in a seat. I mean, kids don't always have to sit. In fact, it's really good for them for every year of age, that's how many minutes they have where they can sit and attend. So if a teacher is teaching a 5-year-old, they have about 5 minutes of direct instruction time. And that's based on brain research. So
Whoa. So I want you to just repeat that again, because that seems like a really important piece that maybe we're glossing over and not paying attention to.
I'd say definitely do it. It's really helpful. It will change your relationship with your kids for the better. It will help you communicate better. And I'd say communicate better as a person, as a wife, as a spouse. It's been really a positive influence in our lives. So definitely do it.
I'd say definitely do it. It's so worth it. The money really is inconsequential when you get so much benefit from being a better parent to your children and feeling like you're connecting more with them and not feeling like you're yelling all the time or you're like, why isn't things working? I would say definitely do it. It's so worth it. It'll change you.
No matter what age someone's child is, it's a great opportunity for personal growth and it's a great investment in someone's family. I'm very thankful I had this.
You can continue in your old habits that aren't working, or you can learn some new tools and gain some perspective to shift everything in your parenting.
Are you frustrated by parenting? Do you listen to the experts and try all the tips and strategies, but you're just not seeing the results that you want? Or are you lost as to where to start? Does it all seem so overwhelming with too much to learn? Are you yearning for a community of people who get it, who also don't want to threaten and punish to create cooperation? Hi, I'm Hunter Clark-Fields, and if you answered yes to any of these questions, I want you to seriously consider the Mindful Parenting membership. You'll be joining hundreds of members who have discovered the path of mindful parenting and now have confidence and clarity in their parenting. This isn't just another parenting class. This is an opportunity to really discover your unique, lasting relationship, not only with your children, but with yourself. It will translate into lasting, connected relationships, not only with your children, but your partner too. Let me change your life. Go to mindfulparentingcourse.com to add your name to the waitlist, so you will be the first to be notified when I open the membership for enrollment. I look forward to seeing you on the inside. mindfulparentingcourse.com.
I can confirm that based on my work. So for every year in age of a child, that's how many minutes of direct instruction they have available. How much mental capacity.
Wow.
And that's in-person instruction. So when you go to virtual instruction, you're probably cutting that in half.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So if we're not doing a direct instruction, so I'm picturing like all these 5-year-olds on a Zoom call, and the teacher's trying to teach first grade or whatever, and learning the letters, and 5 minutes, maybe less than that, 4 minutes max, and then these kids are just they're not attentive and they're not really learning.
And there are some that will be able to attend longer than others. There are some that won't be able to attend as long as others. So where seating comes into play with that is movement. So kids don't have to sit in a seat. Like if they're standing, the blood is circulating to their legs and other parts of their bodies. So can they alternate between standing and sitting?
Like my Uplift desk.
Yes,
like
exactly.
Free promo for Uplift because I
Exactly.
love like my sitting and standing desk. You are standing right now. I can see.
I am.
Both of us
right
are
now.
like standing here having this interview, which so the movement, kids standing. So so you're saying, can we find a place where they can both sit and stand?
Is many different seating arrangements that you can have, so they have choices. Because when you have choices, you have control, you have freedom. And when you have freedom and control in a society that takes it away a lot, especially the educational system, giving back some control in, do you want to sit on the floor? Do you want to sit in the chair? You can choose where you sit. It could, other forms of seating could be like adding something to a seat. So you could do exercise ball, or stool versus chair with no back, so they have to sit more upright. You could do, like, they have when you are in the exercise department at like a Target or a Dollar General or a Walmart, there are these like plastic blown up balance balls. They're like flat circular tubes that people use to practice balance on. And you could buy one of those, they're relatively cheap, and put them on a chair, and a child could sit on them. And because they're air filled, the kids can move around a little bit, and they get some more blood circulation. They get some movement. They don't have to be sitting still in a hard chair. And it also works on their abdominal, their core, that balance.
Okay. So when my husband and I are like, you can't be doing your lessons like lying down in your bed. We want you to be downstairs, but we do want to give her options. What if your child's like continually opting to just slump on the couch for like 3 hours?
Yeah. I think from what I know is that slumping and like getting too comfortable is not conducive for active learning. So that's great if they're reading a book or if they're doing maybe some independent work. So transitioning between spots. So I think a lot of homes, we're setting up like this one area for kids to work, and maybe it's the table, but maybe like the direct instruction is at the table, and then the independent work is in the bed or on the couch, because they can get more comfortable during that work.
Okay. This sounds great. I'm already getting ideas about my space, and I imagine the listener is too. So we want to look at our seating. We want to look at the space and say, can our child sit? Maybe we can get some, what did you say? Like balance ball on the chair, like, or a cushion on the chair?
Yeah. A cushion would be fine too. The balance ball like structure, it's like a air-filled disc would be the best, because it's flat, and most of them have texture to them.
Oh, I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about now. Finally, I envisioned it. Yeah, it's like a 10 or 12 inch
Yes, exactly.
disc that's filled with air. Yeah. I've seen that like as a physical therapist or whatever. Okay, got it. All right, cool. I hope the listener, you got that too. No.
That's a lot of information.
And what about as far as like the walls, the decor? You and I had talked a little bit about how like a lot of elementary school classrooms are way overstimulating as far as walls and decor. What do we want to look for in our own homes?
Yeah. So when we walk into any room as adults, as children, whatever, our brain is both consciously and unconsciously processing everything in that physical environment. So if you have a room just filled with things and color and sensory stimulation, the brain is trying to make sense of all of that and organize it and determine like what it is and is it safe. And that takes away so much of our mental capacity. So when we have these classrooms that are just filled with things, you'll probably, if you pay attention to those kids versus a kid that's in a room or a classroom that is more wall space that's uncovered, you'll see an energy change in between the two rooms. The kids in the room that has the stuff everywhere, they're going to be more heightened. They're going to be more chatty. They're going to be more active. They're not going to be sitting quite as still versus if you walk into a room where there's not a lot on the wall and there's a lot of neutrals. There are a lot of neutrals. You'll see kids in a more calm, quiet state. It's just, it's our intake of all of that sensory stuff on the walls. So less is more. Leaving some white space is really good because if they have a blank white wall, that promotes creativity. So they look at a blank white wall and they can decipher thoughts and ideas and process. But if they are looking at a wall filled with images or color, they're then processing that thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. So simplify the environment. We don't want it to be like a sparse jail cell, but a simple, comfortable environment, basically.
100%. Yes. And warm and inviting. So colors like reds and oranges, or at least those like real strong reds and oranges, they are connected to more heightened emotions, more like frustration and anger. So there's been a lot of study on if you have a lot of like reds and oranges, kids are quicker to anger, quicker to frustration. So if you want kids to be more calm and collected, use some more of those calming, cooling colors. So those, the earthy tones, the blues, the greens, the grays.
Okay. Blues, greens, and grays. Yeah, I like that. I could do that. So we can think about, so now I'm thinking about my dining room and I'm thinking about maybe I'll get some like pillows for the chair, make it more comfortable. Some cool tones and things like that. What about, you talked even about temperature, right? Is there an optimal temperature for learning?
There is. Yes. There's been a lot of study on this too.
So interesting.
Ideally, you want to be between like 68 and 72, 73 degrees Fahrenheit.
68 and 72. Okay.
Yes.
And warmer than that, because sometimes we get our wood stove going in the winter and it gets a little cozy. It's like makes you too sleepy for learning, I imagine.
Exactly. So it's much like in the bed where you're super comfortable and you're laying down, your blood's not, pumping through your body. When it's too warm, you get into this very comfortable state and you sink into relaxation, which again might be okay if you're doing like independent work. But if you're doing direct instruction or the child's trying to learn optimally, you want below 72, 73 degrees.
Okay. All right, cool. What about lighting?
Lighting is probably one of my favorites because it's so connected to our biological rhythms, our circadian rhythms. So if you are, again, want to be active and learning and teaching, and the most conducive lighting environment is natural light. Because back to hunter-gatherers, we were active, we were awake, we were working during those hours of light. During evening and nighttime when it was darker, we were going into a rested and then sleep state. So if you close the blinds too long and it's dark, that's going to release melatonin into the body, and the kids and you might and will start to feel more groggy and more sleepy. So the more natural light we can use, the better.
It's interesting because I was flipping through something and I remember seeing somebody had like converted kind of a closet into like a learning desk area for their child. But maybe that's not such a good idea because you're completely enclosed there. You have no natural light, and there's not a lot of movement or options, or you don't have any kind of different seating option at all, and that you're just kind of stuck in that one spot.
Right. I mean, it would be a choice that we would naturally make. It's like, oh, this small area, it's perfect for a little workspace, a little work area. But yeah, if you want to be attentive and you want to be focused, it's best to be in natural light or near natural light. Or if you're not going to, if you're going to use a space like that to go back to seating, movement, take breaks and step away from that closet and go over to the natural light for a little bit, do a little bit of work, and then come back to the closet and then go back to the natural light to get those little spurts of energy from the light.
Okay, cool. I'm thinking about even encouraging my daughter to like do some work maybe out on her patio too.
Yes.
If you have an outdoor space, that's a great place to then do work, I guess, because I imagine just you're referring to the biology, like for basically all of human existence, except for the last couple hundred years, we would just be outside all the time. So that's where our body, minds, and spirits feel most relaxed and comfortable.
Yeah, and inside we have a lot of artificial light, especially in school systems. A lot of them use the fluorescent bulbs, and they're just so unnatural. Like those things didn't exist hundreds of years ago, so they're a stressor to our stress, our biology. Our internal stress response becomes activated by those unnatural lights because the body doesn't recognize them and the harshness of the light. So yeah, working outside would be awesome. I know that can often lead to some distraction, but if there are expectations set around that working space outside, and novelty can be a distraction. So once they've worked there and they've gotten into a routine of working in that outdoor space, it won't be so new to them, and they'll be able to focus and be attentive. And the benefits of working outside, I mean, more than just natural light, you've got hopefully, well, depends if you're city or suburban or country, but the plant life, anything green is naturally calming, naturally soothing. So if you have, that outside, that helps too. And then just the fresh air too wakes the body up.
So kind of what I'm getting from you too is that, like, with this, going back to what you said earlier about for every year of age, that's how many minutes of direct instruction we should have. It sounds like we kind of want to set it up for our kids to be like, I think of my kids' Montessori classroom where they have this 3-hour work period, and they can choose to work on something, and then they can choose to take a break when they want. They can sit on the rug if they want to work on something here, or they can go sit at a table. They have a lot of those choices and things. So what I'm kind of hearing from you is that if we could create an environment where our kids can have a place to kind of sit and focus, and those calming elements and colors to kind of sit and focus, but then also some space to move and to just move their bodies. Maybe, I mean, what if, say you are in an apartment, you can't go outside, what might you recommend for some like movement breaks to kind of break up those direct learning instruction times?
That's a great question. And I think it's so important more than ever, because we are doing more virtual instruction, that we are scheduling breaks, because kids don't often recognize when they do need a break. I mean, sometimes as adults we can see it, but they need to become aware of their internal feeling. If their body is getting agitated or frustrated, like, that's a great break time. And it's okay to take a break. Like, you want them to be aware of how they feel internally. But I think with that, then my mind goes to like, okay, what can we do to maybe get the blood pumping? Because you get the blood pumping, it's circulating, it wakes the body up. So can they do something like run up and down the steps a couple times? Can they do some push-ups against the wall? Could they do like some squats or any type of adult exercise that you can bring down to the level of a child that gets them moving? The big thing then is they're in a heightened state of energy, which is fine, but you gotta, if you want them to go back to like seated still work, you've got to take them from that heightened energy state to a rested state. So you need something in between. So that's where you bring in that like deep breathing or that more mindfulness, meditative. And it just needs to be like a couple seconds, 30 seconds, a minute. And that will bring them back to like a neutralized state to be able to learn or participate again. So the whole sequence can take, a minute and a half, like a minute to do an exercise, 30 seconds to breathe it out to get to neutral, and they're back and ready to go again. Or we can spend 10 minutes trying to keep their attention and power through.
Okay, so yeah, so like we could just have some music ready to turn on for a quick like dance break. Actually, sometimes my husband and I like we've done the 7-minute workout with the
Yeah.
Alexa, and now my kids do it sometimes, and they've done it with us, and they're like doing their little push-ups with us. It's really funny. My 13-year-old does 7-minute workouts sometimes. It's really hilarious to like, it's great,
It is.
Okay, so we want to factor in some of that movement, and maybe, I guess if we want to think about maybe some ways to like make that easily accessible in the environment, something that either we're modeling or something that, they can see, depending on your resources, I'm trying to think even like for little kids, like maybe even like, I don't know, just like
animal things, so like crab walk or
great.
like mountain pose or like a bear walk, like anything that can be tied to something that is familiar, that kind of has a level of humor or fun, or like, anything like that would be awesome for young kids.
Yeah. Like silly play. That's like the natural stress reliever. And then finally, you also even mentioned aroma. Aroma matters.
Yeah, I mean, if you're focused on something and something smells really good, like cookies, like it's going to take your attention away from the act. So like making cookies when a kid is in direct instruction is maybe not the best time to be baking, because it's going to take their attention away from what they're learning. And that's just a side example, but other things, like if you were to use certain scents, whether they're plants or essential oils, even candles, can ignite learning or neutralize the stress response. So lavender is very calming, and it also is associated with trust. So I encourage teachers, like if you can or don't want to do essential oil, get some lavender, like some real lavender, and like put it in your room when kids come into your room for the first couple weeks of school, or if they're in a home setting and they're putting it near their workstation. So lavender can be really calming. Things like citrus and peppermints can really lift the energy. So if they're, if the kids are like really exhausted, you could put a drop of essential oil on your hand or their hand or on something. They just sniff it, and all of their senses like goes right up into their brain. Their olfactory nerve, all these things wire and fire in the brain, and it alerts the brain to pay attention.
All right, cool. Well, I have some diffusers. I have some essential oils. All right. So when I see the slumping, I'll get out the citrus.
Exactly.
Maybe I'm even having a vision of like maybe the first couple of weeks I'll see if I can get some lavender and some like nice like twigs or plants, and make a little like natural center decor to kind of like make it just feel comfortable and homey. But put in a little more effort than just like, sit here, kid, do the work.
I think the one that like teachers and parents say that is most useful is bringing some plant life into your house or your working environment, because plants are calming. They purify the air. If they're a scented plant, they might have some benefits there to the aromas for working, but considering, can you bring in some plant life? And then kids can have control over maybe picking some of the plants and work on responsibility by taking care of the plants.
Actually, that is my 10-year-old's weekend job, is to water the plants. So that'd be good. All right. Well, so this is awesome. I feel like a spark of excitement now about kind of making this environment more appealing, more calming, more, as we pay attention to these things, it's going to help our kids focus, right? So seating, options, temperature, get that exercise ball maybe, and like even colors and lighting. So this is great. This is giving me a lot of ideas. Is there anything that we miss that you feel like is important to consider, or any like kind of mindset that we want to think about as we go into this?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, my focus is on emotional regulation. The first step in emotional regulation is being aware of your state, your internal state. So with all of these things, like as adults, paying attention to what kids' bodies are doing, but helping kids to cue into what their own bodies are doing and feeling, and acting and responding to that. So if you're teaching as an educator and you see some movement on screen, notice that, pay attention to that, and maybe that's a great break time. Or you talk to the families and encourage them to be aware of their kiddos and their movement within instruction, and encourage them to take breaks, or teach kiddos to focus on their bodies and how they feel, and ask for a break or take their own break. And I think that we just sometimes we're moving so quickly, we overlook the emotional temperature of learning and kids and those feelings.
And that's going to be huge, because if that stress response is firing in our kids, they're not learning anyway, right? So
Right, exactly.
yeah, so that emotional well-being is incredibly important.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. Lauren, I really appreciate you coming on. I appreciate the work that you do helping parents and teachers help those kiddos get that emotional regulation. It's so awesome. And I have so many ideas now. I kind of feel like I have a new home decor mission.
That's the goal.
Learning home decor mission. So where can people find out more about the work you do, and learn more about what you're doing in the world?
Yeah, a great place would be to check out the website. There's some information on there. If you want more specific information about space design and learning space design, I just released a course that goes into a whole lot of detail in all of those areas, and that can be found through the website as well.
Which is?
thebehaviorhub.com.
All right, thebehaviorhub.com. Awesome. Well, Lauren, thank you for doing the work that you do. Thanks for taking the time to be with us today and sharing everything you know about this with everyone. I feel like this is not something that many of us are these are not things many of us are paying attention to. So you're really opening my eyes, and I really, really appreciate it.
I truly appreciate you having me on here and allowing me to share this very important knowledge with everyone. And it's been an absolute pleasure.
Stay tuned for more Mindful Mama podcast right after this break. We are supported by Braddock face masks. Okay, so my mom went and tried the Braddock face masks using the 25% off promo code HUNTER and got them right away. And she loves them for doing her volunteer work outside where it's hot. They are the most comfortable. And I have discovered they are so easily washed and worn. So I really love the way they wash. They come out really easily. Some of the other ones come out stiff and crinkly and strange. These come out super soft every single time. And they're just so comfortable and cool. Braddock does things differently. And now these are the face masks that me and my family wear all the time. And I want you to listen closely because you're going to get that 25% off coupon code off your masks too. They're unlike other masks. They actually feel really good. They use these premium upcycled fabrics, super soft and breathable, and they have moisture wicking technology, and they do definitely hold up after dozens and dozens of washes. If you want to know what upcycling is, it means that they take brand new existing fabrics, less waste. For every purchase using the code, the guys at Braddock are donating masks to those in need. Braddock has already donated thousands of masks to nurses and healthcare workers and first responders across the country. So you're not only doing good for you, you're doing good for others. I invite you to go to their website, BraddockUSA.com, and you'll get an additional 25% off with the promo code HUNTER on your first purchase. That's 25% off your entire order with the promo code HUNTER at BraddockUSA.com. BraddockUSA.com. Use that coupon code HUNTER. Go check them out, get some, and from all of us, let's beat this and move on to better days. Kimberlynn, thank you so much for coming on the Mindful Mama podcast.
I am incredibly honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yay! And I know you. We are going to talk about remote learning. We're going to talk about homeschooling. I have some questions about what are some different terms. Now I've been looking into it, but the reason why I know you, this great, wonderful expert in education, doing this work, doing this remote learning work and helping parents with homeschooling, is because you were part of the Mindful Mama Transformation Coaching Group.
Yes.
Yay. Yes. So before we dive into all those home learning questions, maybe I could just ask you a little bit about what did you experience in that group?
Yes. I actually signed up for that group because you announced it or whatever the day after I found out that I was pregnant with my second child, and I was like freaking out because how can I be mindful with 2 babies? So it definitely was very helpful in bringing me peace of mind and practice. And I feel like so much of it is like simple, but in a way that's deep, and we just keep going through the same thing, and it's the same answers to every question almost, like, so that if you just keep using those same tools, you start realizing that they work in so many different situations, and not just with children, but with my husband, and now it's expanding out to others. So it was really great. And I've noticed with that transformation group, it was such a small group, and we saw the same people every single week and got to know each other, and it was very intimate and very helpful to build that relationship. And the other coaching calls are also good, but then I see like different people in there, so it's harder to like have that same relationship, but it's still really good practice for all of those communication skills that we've been practicing over and over. And the more, even if it has nothing to do with my particular situation, just hearing someone else kind of get coached through it, and that I can hear that the practice of those same skills, that is just really good to apply to everyone. And it just helps reinforce all of it in my mind and make it more second nature.
That's so cool. Like, as you describe that, I picture you as this like with like this like Western gunslinger with this like, what is this like? It's like a fanny pack or something with like holster guns in it, and you've got like these tools, and you're like, and you've got your tools ready now.
Yes, that's how it is, and it's only like 2, right? Like you only need you just have to know a couple things. Like, am I using it because it's my problem or my child's problem? And
yeah. Good. Well, good. All right. So with that glowing endorsement, we have some spots available. Come talk to me about it at mindfulmamamentor.com/group coaching. But that is not what we are here to talk about. We are here to talk about home learning, because we're all, so right before I'm talking to you, Kim, I had my back to school meeting. My kids go to a public Montessori school. And we had our back to school meeting with their teacher, and my kids are going to be going back. They really want to go back they're going a hybrid model, which is 2 or 3 mornings a week. But starting later, starting about 4 weeks after, they're going to have remote learning for 4 weeks. But my own, I'm a little like, what are we going to do? Because remote learning in the spring was such a terrible, I want to say blank show, right? But it was just so frustrating. Like, they weren't learning in sync. Like, my kid had office hours with her teachers like twice a week at 4:00 in the afternoon when we were all done with everything. And it was just like, it was great for my middle schooler, but it was terrible. It wasn't so good for my other daughter and everybody. And I think a lot of people had these experiences where it's like, no one knows what we're doing, just thrown into this thing. So now we may know what we're doing, and we may have some remote learning guidelines, and we may have some structure, but so maybe we can talk about this, like, sort of for little kids. How can we optimize this remote learning experience for our kids?
I've heard so many stories like yours, and ultimately what I keep finding is that it is the same thing that I've always known about kids in general, is every child is unique. Every child has things that needs to be a little bit different. Like, there's some like universal truths about learning and education that I think everybody should understand. But then there's also the individual parts where there are some kids who kind of thrive in this virtual learning environment, as surprising as it is. And then there's a lot of kids who are really struggling with it. And then we're getting like very different things from parents too. Like, some parents will say, why didn't you offer something more rigorous in the spring? We didn't see enough of you. We needed more lessons. We needed more. And then there's other parents who are like, that was too much that you gave us. It was too overwhelming. We can't keep up with all of that. This is too stressful. So
you couldn't win.
yeah, no. And that's it. You have to be adaptive. And so like the school I'm at, we had the plan of the hybrid, like you were talking about. And then we're in California. But so the governor said, no, schools are not open. You cannot go back in person right now. So we had to switch to all remote learning to start our school year. And this is our 4th week. And we've had to also adjust there. So it started off with everybody is on this very rigorous remote learning plan. You know, it's school hours. You're either online or doing this activity. Like you're at school but then there's all these parents who are like, but I work.
Yeah.
Or my child can't do that on their own. Or I have 6 kids and I can't help every single one of them. And this child does just fine, but this child is distracted by all of the other kids. There's so many individual and different situations that we've had to kind of make some adjustments. And there's some kids that don't go on any of their classroom live meets because it just wasn't working well, but they're just doing their own thing. So it's really hard. And I think that when parents know that they can just truly homeschool, because I also see so much time wasted, especially the little ones. Oh my goodness. I watch first grade and our teachers are so amazing. They're so great, but they're trying to get, not quite 30, but 25 plus first graders to like look at a screen and tell and respond to what's this letter. And, they're trying to learn, but then they're calling out this kid and trying to get everybody on the same page. It takes 5 times or more longer than if the parent just did the exact same activity with them one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
And then there's, and just the flexibility of the time, like you kind of have to have an adult sitting next to this first grader. I'm like, well, if that adult just did the teaching, everyone's time and sanity might be saved. But a lot of the kids like seeing the other kids too. So it is really hard. And it is definitely that every child is so unique and needs something individual. And we need to be able to adapt to each child as needed and each home situation as needed.
Well, you give me a lot to ask about because I definitely want to ask what these universal truths are. But, the way I had been thinking about it is like kids 5 and under anyway are like preschoolers, like that seems like it can pretty much be like, let's just have it be play at home and we learn things as we learn in life skills. And you're like nodding at me. So I'm getting, you're like,
yes, 100%. I agree.
Right? Like they learn life skills, they can read books, they can learn a lot through that. Right. But then you talked about first grade and like, so I have a friend who has a first grader and she is going to homeschool her first grader. But like when you get to first grade, I think this is when parents, we start to like freak out a little bit, right? Like, cause this is the age, like kids are supposed to learn to read in first grade, like if they haven't already, or, and there's a lot of like, this is where like academic work starts. So people start to kind of freak out a little bit. So, but you're saying like maybe we as parents can do some homeschooling. So I want to dive into that. I want to talk about the parent homeschooling thing, but let's imagine that the parent is like, no way, Jose, I don't want to be homeschooling. This is not my gig. What are some things we can do to support our kids if we're not going to do any of that homeschooling ourselves? Stay tuned for more Mindful Mama podcast right after this break. We are supported by Peanut. What is it? It's this app that helps you meet like-minded moms and moms-to-be. Peanut provides a safe space for mothers, expectant mothers, and those trying to conceive to build friendships, ask questions, and find support. It introduces you to women nearby at a similar stage in life, which is so cool. I've seen these other moms of teens in there, and it was amazing. Yesterday, I opened up Peanut, and I saw this warning about something that had been happening on TikTok, and I went and showed my 13-year-old daughter, and she said, yes, she had heard about it. And so we got to have this conversation, but I was kind of in the know because of Peanut. Peanut. It was so helpful. Peanut provides access to a community of women who are there to listen, share information, and offer valuable advice. So whether it's teens or understanding IVF or adoption, pregnancy, first years, nursery, and beyond, Peanut is a place to connect with women like you. It's really cool and totally free, so I invite you to download the app for free today. Head to peanut.app.link/mindful. That's peanut, PEANUT app.link/mindful, or find it on your app store. We'll also include that link in our show notes. So if you're on your phone, you could probably flip over to the other side of your player and find that link right in your show notes, or find it on your app store.
I think you definitely have to pay attention to who your child is, and their mental health is number one. Mm-hmm. If they are not emotionally in a good place to be learning, then skip school for that day. Like, there's nothing that they're going to learn. You know, we know that the brain isn't learning when you're not in a good state of mind. If you're really upset or stressed out, then nothing good is happening. And I'm seeing that with some parents are getting so stressed out, and then we know that that is then leading to everyone else in the family is getting stressed out, and then nobody is learning, and it's very stressful for everyone. So I think you have to constantly, how am I feeling about it? How is my child feeling about it? And constantly be checking in with that. And don't be afraid that your child is going to wind up behind everyone else, because they will wind up behind everyone else if they're super stressed out. Like, that's much worse. That's much more detrimental than the missing school for a day or a week, like, or a month. I mean, they can catch up so easily, especially if they are in a state of mind that's allowing their brain to continue to develop optimally. Yeah. You know, you're talking about with kindergartners and preschoolers, like, just be part of the day and reading and playing. Like, we know that so much great brain development happens from play and moving their bodies. It's another big concern I have, is if the kids at the computer all day, they're not moving their bodies, they're not playing, and that can be detrimental to brain development. So we have to make sure that we're balancing those things. And the way that our school has it set up is the kids are, you know, in a session for a little bit, and then they have a long break because the teachers are like working in a lot of small groups throughout the day. So each kid has a lot of breaks in between their sessions. But the parents need to be making use of that, and maybe sometimes not doing the lesson that the teacher just instructed them to do. I know I'm a bad influence, but I'm concerned because I want to make sure that they're getting outside. They need to be getting outside every day. They need to be moving every day. Like that, those are the things we know are going to be helping their brain development and their health, and are going to allow them to continue to learn. If you work really, really hard with a child for 5 hours a day, you're probably not doing any more learning than if you work with them really, really hard for 20 minutes a day, because they just get so overwhelmed and stressed out, they can't keep learning. So I think parents need to just constantly be checking in with their own emotional state, check in with their child's emotional state, make sure their child is getting a lot of active play, and then of course the regular good sleep, good nutrition, and those things.
You know, what you say rings so true to me, because I was listening to a podcast where we were talking about intelligence and the way they measure intelligence and things like that, and talking about how you cannot separate intelligence from interest. And so if you have like this driving interest in whatever, you're going to have like this huge capacity for intelligence in that area. And what you're saying is that, I love this, giving people permission to skip a day if you need to, because that mental health is number one. And you're right, like that, that stress response is cutting off access to the higher order brain, and that your child is literally not learning anything if they're stressed and upset. And so let's step back a little from the cliff. Let's change our expectations and make it a little bit more of a go with the flow. And I know that parents are worried about like routines and rhythm, trying to kind of set up a routine. And routines are great, and that structure is great. But I guess I invite people to kind of like think of it a little bit more as a rhythm, like kind of first we do this and then we do this. But then mental health is the same as physical health. I guess you probably wouldn't say like if a kid's having a real rough day or parents having a real rough day, you probably wouldn't say like just put them in the room with YouTube Kids on for 2 hours instead of doing their lessons. Like what might they do instead?
Get outside wherever you can, ideally. And if you can't get outside, at least move. You know, the movement, or playing Lego, or something where you're moving your body is a great way, especially, you know, the right left hemisphere. We want both sides of your both sides to be moving. That actually helps brain development so much. They've found that kids who never crawled often struggle with reading.
Huh.
So one of the strategies is if a kindergartner is really struggling with learning some things, or a first grader, if I find out that they've never crawled, then that's their homework. They need to be crawling every day and climbing. You know, that the coordination between left and right hemisphere of left and right body is coordinating your left and right hemisphere, all of those brain connections. It's huge and makes a huge difference in your child's ability to learn. So I get worried if we aren't moving enough, because then our brain isn't developing the way it's supposed to be. And we get worried about, like, I especially get frustrated with like the rote memory stuff, like knowing your ABCs and what number is this, like all of that comes so easily later if your brain has been developing properly. If you worry about trying to get your, you know, child to know all of their letters and numbers at the cost of not allowing them to play freely, openly, moving their entire body, and also problem solving and being creative with like building, like I said, with like Lego, and figuring out what it can be, or even just blocks, like wooden blocks. We just really love Lego in this house, but we also have wooden blocks and do a lot of building in general. Is just, that's great problem solving stuff too. And even just creative play, imaginative play, like all of that helps with so many different aspects of brain development. It's how kids naturally learn. And yet when we see it, we so often think, well, it's fun, so it must not be learning, but it is learning, and it's almost better. Well, it actually is better learning than a lot of what we do offer in terms of the rote memory. You know, you have to memorize your ABCs. And even older kids, you have to memorize your multiplication tables. You have to memorize the steps for long division. It all is so much more meaningful if children are physically involved in what they are learning, and physically playing, and all of the whole body and whole brain interacting, and the interest, like you said, interest is so huge in getting a child to learn something.
Yeah. So my daughter who's 10 going into 5th grade, she's not so great with her times tables. It's not her strength. So we've been trying to go over it. And then she discovered this Delaware site for rescue horses. And she saw that was $800. And so the last few days she has been calculating up like how much it would cost to board a horse, how much the tack would cost, where she can find used tack, how much, 12 months of boarding times 4 years, because the horse is 16 years old, would cost. And then how much it would cost if we go to this other place where board is like a lot cheaper. And so this interest is driving her to like do all this like math and multiplication just like on her own. And it's so beautiful to see that. So I've been like chilling out and my like my times tables help with her. But let me just like recap. So you're saying like we can support them by basically like kind of providing those breaks, providing that support, making sure they're moving, provide a break if they're having a hard day, take care of that mental, emotional health first, and get moving, get climbing, go outside. You basically take care of the whole child and then provide that support then for the remote learning. That's a way to provide that support.
Right. Yeah, all of that provides the support for the remote learning.
Awesome. So
yeah, there's something else I forgot.
Oh, no, say it.
No, I was, you reminded me of something, but I was just reinforcing that, yeah, you need to keep in mind what's going on with your child and make sure that they are getting access to all of that. The other part that I was going to say was, if your child is doing well, then there are other things that you can do to help them learn more deeply. So like if you're there and you're seeing a lesson, do everything you can to make that lesson real life for them. Like you gave a great example of something that was entirely your daughter, but even if your daughter hadn't seen that, a lot of times you can see that, they're in 6th grade and they're learning about interest. How can we apply that to finding out about, or percentages? If we think about percentages, like I remember as an adult, I taught one of my friends about percentages because we were like shopping and it said 30% off. And she's like, how much is that? So I was teaching her how to figure out what the cost would be. But it had never stuck with her because it had never been a real life application. And then she was like, that's so easy. Why didn't I know that?
Yeah.
But it was like this mysterious math. So anytime we can make things very real for our child, bring in something they're interested in or hand them something that's like a physical manipulation of that idea. That's really big that I worry about, that we too often go straight to doing math, paper, pencil. And we don't start with the concrete, this is what numbers really look like. Here's all the objects that you're adding and what it looks like. And even big numbers, you can get a whole bunch of tiny little cubes and the base 10 blocks or the Montessori.
Oh my God, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, because I've been watching these Montessori materials my whole life thinking oh my God, if I only learned math this way, I would it would have been so much better. Yeah, so Montessori materials are amazing. So maybe this is a good segue into homeschooling, because maybe these are some things that we can provide for our kids, right? Or if you have the means, you may be able to get some cool stuff that might support your kids' learning.
Yes. So Montessori has their golden beads and they're great and I love them. The cheaper version that they don't think is the same for a couple of reasons, but they're mostly the same, is just called base 10 blocks. You can get a set of base 10 blocks on Amazon for about $25. And it'll come with a giant cube that represents 1,000 of the tiniest pieces. And then they've got the sticks that are 10 of the tiniest pieces, and then flat big squares that are 100. So they're getting kids, and if you really use them a lot, kids start to really recognize that these 10 tiny squares equal one longer piece, and 10 of those equal this. And they start to really see those numbers. So then we tend to use them with kindergartners. And then when our kids get older, we want them to just do everything paper, pencil. And why can't they understand that? And of course they can't understand that because they don't know what that huge number really is. So if you actually have them build out, 547 plus 329 and see how big that is and manipulate this doesn't all fit here because I'm only allowed to have up to 9 tens in the tens place. I'm only allowed to have up to 9 hundreds in the hundreds place. And I've got to move things around to make this work. And, if they start really knowing those rules and how it works and understanding it, there's so many great ways to really concretely teach how that all works.
So I think I can
So
like
much.
hear the listener getting scared at like, OMG, I cannot do this. Like I'm getting confused as Kimberlynn's talking myself as to what the heck she's talking about.
I know.
So like
Visuals definitely help.
yeah. So that would be very helpful here. But part of what you do is you reassure parents that they actually can homeschool. So they could decide to kind of opt out if their kid isn't doing well, their child isn't doing well with remote learning. You could just do it on your own. So talk a little bit about that. Like, what's that like?
And that totally depends on you and your child and what works best for you. Because there's a lot of different systems out there that are like their way of doing it. So there's like a very like kind of traditional approach where you basically are almost copying school but at home. Mm-hmm. So there's a little bit more flexibility with it, and that's what a lot of people are most comfortable with to start with, because they want to make sure their child is getting a really good education. So, okay, give me the same textbooks that they would be doing at school, and we're going to still have the same routine, and it works. But then there's always the question, well, then why did you pull them out of school? Because it's just extra work on you. But then there can be still, even if you do that, you can still have the flexibility of following their interests. So if they're interested in a certain novel, then you don't need to do the novel that was going to be happening in class. You can do this other novel, and you can work on those same skills. Like there's nothing that magical about whatever novel the teacher picked. It's what skills was the teacher trying to work on through that novel. So there's a lot of things out there, and I'm trying to back myself up because I get too excited and say and go too far, which is kind of where I was going with the base 10. Like I'm like, what is great? Point is, for that one was just that manipulatives are great. Anything concrete is great for math. For this though, if you look at different states are a little bit different. They all have their own homeschooling rules. So you have to look up your state's exact rules, and different states have different state standards. We were trying to go to the same standards for every state, because it used to be like every state basically had their own thing going on. And then we tried to do the Common Core so that everybody in the whole country had the same standards, but then a lot of states opted out of that and still have their own standards. So you kind of have to look to see which your state has, and if that even matters for your situation. Because if you're going to be doing your own thing the whole time and your state doesn't require that you follow the standards, then it doesn't even matter what the standards are. So there's a lot that you have to look at kind of individually that I can't help with too much because it's 50 different states and all of their rules. But no matter where you're at, there are certain aspects that you want to understand about learning. And there's like a few simple things to start with. And that if you understand, then it kind of applies to everything. And then I have videos that I do every week to like try to teach more specific strategies that are still applicable to everyone. But you want to know that one of the things that you want to definitely know is that your child will learn the most with whatever they are interacting with, especially if they are teaching it. So we know that kids learn the most when they are, well, even adults learn the most when they're explaining it to someone else. So the best way to get them to learn something is to have them teach what they just read or learned in math or whatever you want them to learn really well, you want them to teach it. So you could have them teach it to a stuffed animal, have them teach it to the dog, have them teach it to their little brother, have them teach it to dad or grandpa or you. Like they can teach it to anybody or anything. It's just as a matter of having them practice teaching it. A real person's a little bit better because then there's the ability for them to get some feedback. But even if they're teaching it to a stuffed animal, it's good practice and it'll still help them reinforce what they just learned. And similarly, anything that they speak, they tend to learn better than what they are just receptively hearing and seeing. One of kind of a pet peeve of mine is I'll see these like quizzes. What type of learner is your child? And that you like have to know what type of learner your child is. And there is some truth to it. Like I'm not very auditory myself. Like I know that I learn better with visual stuff. But we also know that every child, no matter what type of learner they are, learns best with multiple modalities. So if you just are always giving them visuals and auditory and something kinesthetic that they can touch and move, and, you know, if you're doing everything all the time and having them teach it and interact with it, they're always going to be learning the most. And another really important one is whatever you're trying to teach them is going to be learned a lot better and a lot more deeply if you don't teach it directly, but you ask them. It goes back to like the Socratic method, right? Like Socrates used to always just ask questions of his students to get them to learn something. And it's still very true. If we ask our child a question that they then have to figure out for themselves what the answer is instead of just being told the answer, they learn it so much more and they understand it so much more. Because if they have to be the one that comes up with the answer, then they have to truly understand it. If they just repeat back whatever you said to them, they don't have to understand anything that you said. They just have to repeat it. They just have to be a parrot. And the parrot doesn't understand what they're being told. So there's, I think that those are a couple of the big ones, is making sure that that you're asking questions, that you're providing multiple modalities. And like I said before, the hands-on experience is really, really critical.
So you could, now I imagine some listener may be like, oh my gosh, that's intimidating. But kind of what I'm hearing you say is like, if you have a 6-year-old, like maybe this week you learn how to make pretzels, and then you count up the pretzels and maybe you subtract them away, and maybe you read Walter the Baker, you know, like, and you,
Absolutely.
you know,
Yes.
So you can just, it's not like you have to do everything all, you know, this is not like you have to do this multiple times a day with 6 different lessons. This is like saying, like, let's just think about what do I want my child to learn, and like, and then learn these things probably through everyday life and reading and the different things we're doing anyway. Right.
Yes. And like we said before, like just them playing is helping their brain development and their critical thinking skills, and the imaginative play, like that's so great for them to be able to be a great writer, a creative writer later, right? Like all of these ideas that we feel like we have to teach, a lot of times we get stuck in this like almost like lecture mode, like this is what you have to learn and now it's school time, and it's not always conducive to the best learning, and we know that, but we get kind of stuck on like being worried that they're not learning enough. And yet we know that if we relax a little and just kind of enjoy that process, that we will see the long-term benefits. So even if your child doesn't start reading in kindergarten, then, which not every country teaches at 5 years old. Some countries don't start teaching until 7 or 8 years old. And that's okay, because they know that they're going to learn it. It's not going to be detrimental to them long-term, as long as you're also recognizing what is it that's causing struggles. If you're really seeing struggles, like we're really trying to work on this and my child doesn't seem to be able to grasp this. You know, there are different types of learning disabilities that I work with, and I help those kids, but a lot of what I'm doing is helping them work through the difficulty using all of their strengths, which I feel like any parent can learn how to do, because they know their child so well. They know what those strengths are. So if they can just learn a little bit about how to build on those strengths and make those more powerful, they definitely can empower their child to feel so successful, because they'll realize, well, I don't really have to know my times tables because I might learn it eventually anyway. Which, by the way, I didn't know my times tables, honestly, all the way until I was in high school. And I was like, supposedly gifted. Like, I didn't know. I learned them because I was constantly doing it, putting it into a calculator in high school. And then I just like, through all of that, like doing it over and over, eventually I learned them all. So yeah, it's not like, I have parents and teachers that have even said to me, but he can't do long division. He doesn't know his times tables. I'm like, he doesn't need to know his times tables. It is easier. I will say that it's easier, but they can actually learn it with a times tables chart next to them, or a calculator, or, there's other things that can be provided that will allow them to still make progress and still participate in the world, especially in our world today with all of this technology. That's one thing I have to convince some parents of, is your child will always have a calculator in their pocket.
Yes.
Like, that's just the world we live in. So it's okay. And they also now will always have speech to text, like the dictation. So, because that's one of the accommodations that I'll recommend for a lot of my kids, not just that they can't write, but like ADHD kids especially, they like get so floundered by the writing process that they do better if they can just say it all, instead of like trying to find all the letters, especially if they aren't really good at typing, or trying to find all the letters. But if they can just like speak into the computer, now that the resistance is gone. Before they might've been like, I don't want to write, or I already did that. And now they're like, oh, I'll just, turn on voice typing and here we go. And they do great with it. And it's something that is always in their pocket. So it's not like, years ago, it was something that was like assistive technology, and you had to have like it written into their IEP, and it was like this whole to-do. And now it's just everybody has access to it all the time. Like, I don't think my mom ever texts me without using voice typing.
And you get a few funny text messages. That's just fine. But this is great, Kimberlynn. I really appreciate you coming on. Kind of, you're reassuring me, because sometimes, like, when I get worried about my child, like, we all get a little rigid, right? We get a little tense, and when we worry, we try to like control more. It's all the parallels are sort of coming out, right? Like, and you're saying that we can relax a little bit more. We can soften. We want to take care of that mental, emotional health. And then, we want to work with our child's strengths. I love all these homeschooling basics. These are really great. So, Kimberlynn, thank you so much. If people want to find you and find out more about what you do, where can they find you?
My website is yourparenthelp.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, and trying to get a little more active on there. But I do, if they go to yourparenthelp.com, they can sign up for weekly emails. I do videos every week with tips on math, reading, writing, and just like learning strategies in general. And I also have a free download, is the Octopus's Guide to Reading Comprehension. So there's 8 strategies to work on reading comprehension in there. And basically for anybody from like 3 up to 12 years old, some of the strategies would work beyond that. Some of them are a little more elementary, but there's something at least for everybody in there. And there's a lot that I have.
Great.
That I think everybody can learn pretty easily. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for reaching out and coming on the podcast. I really appreciate what you're doing, and you've let me take a deeper breath myself. So I know that if I'm feeling that, many of the listeners are too. So it's so much appreciated. Thank you, Kimberlynn.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
I got so much out of talking to Kimberlynn and Lauren, and I hope that you have gotten a lot out of this episode. For me, it was a big relief, and it helped me think about my space more, and it helped me just let go of some things where I'm no longer quizzing Zora on her multiplication tables. Thank goodness school has started again. So I hope it's provided you some ahas and maybe some relief. And if it has, I'd love to know. It's great I love it when you can take a screenshot of what you're listening to this on and tag me on Instagram. I'm at Mindful Mama Mentor. And that's such a great way to let me know. Put it in your stories and tag me. I love it. And I want to know what your takeaways and ahas were. I hope this has been helpful. If it has, of course, share it with some friends. And I'm just wishing you the best. This is such a hard time, and we can do it together. We can remember that we can figure out hard things. We can do hard things together. Everything is figure outable. We don't need all the answers to get started. Their teacher and I were on the same team, and this is hard, but we can work together for solutions. So let those be some mantras for you. I'm going to make them the mantras for me. Thank you so much for listening. I'm so glad to connect with you. I hope to talk to you again. I will see you next Tuesday right here, same time, same place. And maybe I'll see you in the membership. Maybe you'll join in these last couple days. It's open at mindfulparentingcourse.com, and you'll take it to the next level, and then we'll really get to know each other. Either way, I can't wait to connect again, and I'm wishing you a beautiful, peaceful week, my friend. Namaste.